Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of American Scouser TV's Monday Night Premier League show. I will be sitting in the big chair for Timuchin this week. It's Gally here in Western Massachusetts. I'm joined, as always, by Bickler from somewhere in the Carolinas. What's the weather forecast in the Carolinas,
It's rainy and cold and crappy, and I'm fat enough to take up my chair and yours so you can sit Timuchin's. We're good.
Fair enough. Fair enough. We are dealing with a polar Arctic vortex in the Northeast, which basically is a real firm way to say it's fucking January, people. Suck it up. It was a lot colder when I was younger. I sound like my grandpa. Proud of myself. Sir Z with an amazing new Liverpool avatar says, "Good evening, gents." That thing could fill up a few chairs. And BJ jumps in with greetings, gentlemen. Look at these pictures we have.
These are unreal.
I really love it. I love it now that StreamYard's updating. So
pull up BJ's again. Pull up BJ's again.
We'll bring that back in a second. This is Mane Happy Returns, Gally. That's because Sir Z, as he does, everyone wishes them a Mane happy birthday on their birthday. And I am exactly 47 years and 1 day old today. But BJ, we got to bring his back up.
Yeah, so like for an American audience, right? Like you wouldn't know this unless you were in part of the internal Discord chat. But if you looked at this picture, you would automatically know that this guy's a Clemson fan. But we know that from Discord. But if you're just looking at that picture, I mean, it's pretty clear.
I will tell you, Bickler, I wouldn't be poking fun at BJ too much because BJ's back in charge of the damn trivia these days.
I know. I'm surprised
we are at
me too because Michigan
we are at the mercy. We are at the mercy of his court. Right. I will say, I am filling in for our normal host and dictatoring leader Timuchin as he is celebrating his anniversary with his lovely wife Angie, who you and I were lucky enough to meet. I know you'd met once before. Earlier this year, which prompted me to say today, like, that woman deserves an award herself for being married to him long enough that his children would actually want to celebrate their anniversary. Because me and you have to deal with them for 1 hour a week from 8 to 9 through like a Zoom video channel from across the country. And, well, I mean, we see how much you show up, so we know exactly how difficult that is.
Yeah, I was going to make a comment about him not having his priorities right, but I think my attendance record this year probably, well, not this year, last year, new year, new me, or whatever.
You know how it goes. We all understand how it happens. It's that time. It's that time where we do trivia. And most times I skip over this slide, but when you have third-party folks helping you out and you have something as great as this is purely so Sir Z doesn't send me any birthday cards with money on it next year.
I love when we run this, how like you can actually watch the amount of people viewing go down, like live in real time.
Favorite part is numbers are going up. Twitter loves it, people. Twitter loves it. Yeah, that's enough. Timuchin's questions is exactly how far we need to go in that song. And then we have hit the wall. That, and I want to keep Sir Z online. So before we do the question, BJ says award, she deserves a sainthood. I would absolutely agree with that. Timuchin's asked, where is the unsubscribe button? It is nowhere. And as the fearless leader would tell you, we do not.
Yeah, once you subscribe, you're locked in. It is what it is.
And either way, even if now's you can't leave. Yeah. Even if you tried to unsubscribe, Timuchin would just grab you by an ear and drag you over until you resubscribe to that channel. So let's get right at it. This one here, as you may have thought of, has something to do with our upcoming FA Cup third round match against Accrington Stanley.
Good thing I Googled Accrington Stanley today.
And really all you found was that there was an ad asking about Accrington Stanley back in the day in England, because that's the only reason anyone in England knows who that club is. Who's Accrington Stanley? All right. The prior And only other time Liverpool played Accrington Stanley was on January 7th, 1956. Timuchin was 7. Was also a third-round FA Cup match at Anfield. It was 3 days before the club captain at the time's 34th birthday, who celebrated that birthday by scoring a brace in Liverpool's 2-0 win. He had 228 goals in his Liverpool career in 534 appearances. Mr. Bickler, who was that club captain? And before you say it, it was not Steven Gerrard.
1956?
That's the year, brother.
I don't even know who the striker was in 56.
While you're thinking of that, I'm going to say, Alan says, good evening from Houston. Do you have a guess?
Give me a second. I'm going through the list of old-timey players that I have no business trying to repeat as fact. In this Liverpool side, who would have been from all there? It's way past. For some reason, the only person I could remember from that era and that side was Ronnie Moran, who was like a fullback then. I'll go. The only attacking player I can remember is the Scot, Billy Liddell, but I don't think that's right. But that's what I'm going to say.
The answer is one William Beveridge Liddell.
Wait, what?
It is. You got it right. And the funny part is I watched your face the whole time to see if you actually looked at the screen, and you weren't, because you were actually trying to like use deductive reasoning. Because I'll give Alan a lot of credit. Alan had it within a minute or a second of me saying it. Alan dropped it in the chat, and then Sir Z came in and then gave the Liverpool name as well. So it was Billy Liddell.
Did you say it was a striker though?
Nope, I just said that it was the club captain who scored 2 goals and scored the brace in the 2-0.
See, I backed my way into that because I was trying to find a striker in my mind, and I thought it was because Billy was midfield. Okay,
yeah, it was just who was the club captain. He scored a brace. He had 2. I think what threw you off is I gave you the number of goals he had and the number of appearances. Yeah. So you immediately went to, if he was Darwin Nunez, he'd have 45 appearances and 2 goals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I connect a lot of dots that aren't there because of choices I make recreationally. But yeah, we really backed my way into that one.
Sir Z says Yates was our regular captain, but he wasn't playing that day.
No, that's right. Yates was on that team. See, that's the thing is we do this, but I've lived my entire life following the Detroit Lions. I don't even know players in the 50s on the Detroit Lions. This Liverpool thing has gotten out of hand.
Yeah, it's a great question. That was a great question by Sir Z. It was great answers by Sir Z and Alan. It was a great question by BJ. And as always, thank you to everyone who is already filling up the chat. Keep your chats coming. We will make sure and bring them up on the screen throughout the program so we can talk about them. So, Paul, obviously, it was a good weekend. We had the Liverpool versus Manchester United match. There was talk of it potentially being postponed right up until early hours here in the United States. I think it was 3-4 in the morning. They finally announced it was officially going to happen. What were your thoughts leading up with regards to the potential cancellation, rescheduling, postponement? We already have a match. Were you more worried about the fixture pileup? Were you worried about, I know Timuchin was a big one at this, of playing that fixture in this crazy inclement weather, because that always seems to help maybe the side that's on a little less form or needs it more.
Does it? I don't know if I buy that, dude. Bad teams are bad teams. You're both playing in the same weather. You know what I mean? I know I've heard that argument before, but I just never really found that to be the case. I think if you play down to the level of your competition, you're just as likely to do that in good weather as bad weather. I think bad weather, yeah, sometimes if you're predicated on pace, it can play a part. But I don't think either teams really have, I guess Mo is impacted by that, right? But I feel like our style is less contingent on that top over the ball pace of Salah on the counter with the way that we kind of build up play. I personally wanted to play this match just because I thought we were catching United at such a good time to catch them, considering the fact that they've been in such poor form, and they seem from an energy and sort of a I don't know, they just seem kind of down on themselves right now. So I just wanted to play them now, and I didn't want to worry about having a congested fixture schedule. We're playing every friggin' 3 days for multiple weeks. So
Darwin the Goat jumped in, says, "Hey, gents, how's it going? Appreciate you viewing as always. Do you still believe Darwin can make it at LFC? I think we'll touch on this at some point, talking about his substitute appearance. I don't know that's the topic for tonight's pod.
Is this a Kazi burner account, though?
No, I genuinely don't believe it because, one, I don't know that he would have the time, patience, or effort. And if Kazi wanted to insult Darwin,
he would definitely have the time and effort.
Absolutely. If he wanted to insult Darwin, he would do it under his own accord and quote himself. Probably talking the third person. He'll start quoting himself in it. I might put it up to be Gordo before anything. Sparky Parky says United wanted it more. And Sir Z says hindsight, we should have had the game postponed. The weather played no part. United are only 27 miles away. We face a United team that showed some self-pride. I think we're going to talk quite a bit about United as this program goes on in breaking down this match. But let's start with Liverpool, because I think talking too much about how good United's performance is, which it was a really good performance, the best they've put in under Amorim, especially heart-wise, no question. We'd be remiss not to talk about how poor a performance it was from really almost the entire side. I think there's maybe 2-3 players on the pitch that covered themselves at all in glory, and some of them were even masked by moments of pure brilliance that kind of overshadowed an overreaching poor performance. And I think that poor performance actually extends to the manager, who I think kind of got the lineup wrong. I don't think his substitutions and his tactical changes at halftime were anything what we've been used to seeing. I also don't think the Anfield crowd was great either, but I give you a subtle pass when you're sitting in that fucking weather, because that is some brutal ass shit, even if you're from that area. And to be honest, Liverpool fans, let's not throw stones, because they showed our brand new $80 million stand with water pouring through like the thing had a hole in the roof, pissing all over our supporters. So I know we love to make fun of the leaks at Old Toilet. Did not have a good look there on the Any Road stand. Did you see that image? I
did. I 100% believe a United supporter went up there and punched a hole in it the night before. 100%. You can't convince me otherwise. We spent 3 years making fun of them about it, and it just so happens the day we play them that it does that. There's no way that's a coincidence.
All right, let's talk about the lineup here before we get back to some of the comments flowing into the chat. And as always, get your comments into the interactive chat. We'll bring them up on screen. We'll talk about them as they meet the topics and or conversation we're having. So, Paul, when you first saw this lineup, what were your initial reactions, surprises, omissions, frustrations, anything?
Admittedly, I hadn't been keeping up much on what the training had looked like throughout the week, so I was a bit surprised to see Konate dropped in there right out of the gate, but it makes sense considering Gomez picking up another knock. Obviously the big shocker there that we'll talk about is Soboslai not even being in the lineup because he's sick. So, I think that was probably the big one, right? We figured what's he got, the norovirus or something? How does he not even make the bench? So I think that's probably the big one. Although I don't love Diaz up top in the middle, apparently the managers see something he likes a little bit there. So not totally surprising, just don't love it.
I'm not a huge fan of it either. I think in this case he did it, and I had said, I think it was one of the shows, maybe the watch along I did with Matush, I had mentioned that I thought that Diaz might excuse me, I thought Diaz would get the start. One, because Darwin's so out of form, and I don't think the manager thinks Jota has 90 minutes in his legs yet. And with a lot of matches coming, I don't think he wanted to chance a regression or some type of injury. I also feel like against a back three that isn't mobile and a midfield two that could have had, the ghost of Casemiro in it, it's all right to have a guy like Diaz's movement and speed leading your line. I, too, was nervous about the Konate. I'd say this. If you ask me, what is your, gut reaction to this lineup? My gut reaction is the club needs to buy 2 center backs because the manager clearly does not believe that Jarell Kwanzaa is a Liverpool-level center back. Because he put in a good shift when he was forced to come on and play for Gomez in the last match. He wasn't great, but he was very good. And the fact that he can't get back on the pitch, I mean, this is a kid that got yanked after 45 minutes after seemingly winning the number 2 job out of camp, was substituted as a substitute, was brought on in a Champions League match for 8 minutes of stoppage time, conceded a goal, and the manager ripped him for 10 minutes in the post. The manager gave more time in the post-match presser that day after the mistake in extra time than he had on the pitch. And since has seen nothing. And to me, that was an issue that I did have. And I think Konate, and we've talked about this on this podcast many times, we've talked about how Konate is almost like a striker in many ways as a center back, and that he's a player that plays in confidence and in rhythm. And to have him go in there in a big match like United in such a high-profile moment, even though they were playing way down, and to Sparky Parky's point from above, I actually agreed. I forget where it was. Here it is. Liverpool walked onto the pitch expecting to win, but just by turning up. And it did look like that because the first 10, 15 minutes, we looked like we were stuck in second gear. And to be fair, I thought Anfield also thought they were stuck in second gear. Sir Z's saying, I think Kwanzaa was rested for Wednesday's game. I think maybe Slot took for granted that Man United wouldn't trouble our defense. I don't know about that. I do think Kwanzaa will start Wednesday night. Please don't ever tell me we're saving a guy for a League Cup semifinal match to not play a more fit guy against United, because you would have been resting Konate for 4 more days to get him more fit. He had only trained for 2 training sessions before the match. This felt a little Jurgen-esque to me. The first Jurgen-esque thing that Schlott has done. Because I feel like he thought to himself, Chelsea's dropped points, Arsenal's dropped points. We're going with the best side. We're going for the juggernaut today. And I just really, really didn't understand it. Cody False 9 says, start Costas and Connor versus Spurs, please. We'll get to the starting lineups for Spurs when we preview that game, but let's stick here on the United match for a little bit. Where are you, Paul, with the manager's setup, how we came out the blocks? Was there anything in that first 45 minutes that either you kind of gravitated towards? Was it to you just kind of a laissez-faire 45 minutes of football? Because it felt like it was one of the most mediocre halves of football I've watched this Liverpool side put in all year.
I don't think the setup of the lineup was I think we kind of hit on the things that we wanted to. I'm a little bit worried anytime that you start Konate cold, especially when he is coming back off an injury. So to see him in what, in my opinion, I thought he struggled, that wasn't surprising, right? But I think some of the performances, obviously subpar. We'll get to Trent, I'm sure. I thought he was a shit show for the entire duration of the time he was out there. My thing about these matches, when you play a team when you play a rival team, right, and they're down and you're up and you come in and United came into this game, I am convinced that the reason that United came out of here with points is a combination of the fact that we came in and we didn't come out with any sort of degree of focus or wanting to put our foot on their throat. We just kind of came out and played, I thought, in a way that indicated that we didn't have a real sense of urgency. And I think when you do that against a team that is a rival and that rival is scared you're going to embarrass them, what you would do is allow a team to hang out and they're sitting there 20 minutes into a match, 0-0, they start to figure some stuff out. They start to have a little bit of confidence, and they stop playing scared and starting to find their own rhythm. And I felt like that's what happened in this match.
To your point here, Brian Shelton said I think he meant we let them grow into this match. And I completely agree with the both of you. I think we had a couple early opportunities. We spurned them. We didn't take chances that we could have had. It led to them getting a couple. The game became a little bit more open, and then they grew into confidence. They had a little bit of bright play through Bruno and Ahmad. Obviously, Ahmad Diallo is a very talented young player. You can see that. I've said for a while, I think he's as talented, if not more talented than Garnacho, even if maybe Garnacho might have like a higher upside. If you put him around great players, he may look a little better. I think to where Sparky Parky's going is where I was going, is United came out in the second half believing. We went to halftime at 0-0, and I said to myself, okay, they get in the dressing room. They figure this thing out. From here, they go on a run. Slot makes a couple adjustments, second half substitution, and we score the first and we win 3-0. United's the team that comes out with the better adjustments. United's the team that comes out on the front foot, to be fair. Trent single-handedly tried to give them 3 opportunities in the first 10 minutes of the second half. You think Trent was still in the dressing room right now from halftime, right now, having his cup of tea. And then they score the goal, the opener, which is just a ridiculous finish by Martinez on a good run and a nice pick out by Bruno. Got to give the rat face credit when he delivers a ball like that. And it was a nice finish. Nothing Allison can do. But before we talk about how the second half transpires, what we saw and what we Trent was, let's take Sir Z's comment. Jones was poor, not starting on Trent. Too much has been said about him since the first 10 minutes of the game. I'm sorry, Sir Z. You can defend any player you want, and we can blame the Scouser. We can blame today's Scouser du jour. This isn't piling on. Those are facts, my friend. And this is a kid who wants $300,000 plus per week for 5 years, which equates to a $78 million contract to be a defender, and also in contract, basically, from what the reports are, is requiring the captain's armband starting next season. So you're basically saying, not only will we sign you, we'll let the other guy who's holding the armband and doing the job go. No duels won in the air or on the ground. I'd argue it should be a -1 for duels in the air for the fact that he allowed a ball to bounce in his own penalty box and still stood and watched the attacking player play it in between him and the keeper to another defender. There is footage of him flat out trotting on the pitch while players are running behind him. I just have to ask you, Paul, before we get to all the comments and everybody's both the defenses of him and the gripes about him, was it more about the weather yesterday, or was that like one of those 90-minute performances, which is almost like a culmination that just lets you realize, like, this is a young man who is like, if you ever wondered why I probably want to be playing my football in Spain, it's afternoons like this on Merseyside, because he never looked up to it from when they walked out on the pitch.
I just think, there's 22 guys out there, right? So, and one of them had that match, and it happened to be him. And I don't think it's a coincidence that happens on a week where there's reportedly been a contract offered north of $350 a week, which to me is absolutely insane to give to a fullback, regardless of who that fullback is. I mean, I would think that was insane even if we were playing Klopp's system, where we legitimately built a system around him playing at his best. I still would think that's insane. I think I have failed to remember us coming off of a match and seeing a single player so vehemently destroyed online. And I think that really says a lot, because I think the majority of supporters, I think there's a small camp that are backing Trent regardless. But I think for most of us supporters, we've seen the words not match the actions for long enough now. And to see a performance come off like that after what seems like wanting a lot of things that I don't think are necessarily good for the club or necessarily make sense for what he brings to the club and team. I think that culmination of all of those things and that performance resulted in what we saw, like in terms of like the vehement reaction to that performance. And I think that Trent has a little bit of Kevin Durant in him, where like a lot of people think that like he's like out and completely oblivious to. I guarantee you Trent saw everything that happened online. And I honestly hope he did, because I think somewhere deep down, Trent has got to reconcile the fact he, to steal a line from Jennifer Lopez, I feel like Trent has forgotten where he's come from. Like I legitimately, I think that he has forgotten that he grew up on the streets of Liverpool, came through the academy, was blessed with an insane opportunity to crack the starting 11. Not that it wasn't deserved. Kid had an outstanding array of passes that he could make at an early age that 90% of players still can't make in their prime. So definitely deserved. But I think he does not – I don't know if it's the people in his ear, the company he's choosing, but somebody's in his ear, and he does not have a realistic idea of where he is and what he is as a player right now. And that was never more apparent than when he made the balloon d'or comment. A, laughable. B, completely disconnected from reality when you look at the history of that award. And C, completely alarming to me to hear a player that disconnected. So I think it's all on him. To me, we've talked about the fact that he switches off mentally, like whether it's him not making the England squad when we think he should and like what that looks like. I think he's mentally and emotionally soft. And I think that's a real problem for him. And I'll tell you what, him going to Madrid is not going to make that any easier, because if he thinks that he's been hard done here for any reason, wait till he goes to Madrid and doesn't do well.
Yeah, I've said all along, I am not going to be someone who supports from a distance. I'm not going to be someone who wishes him injury or wishes him like ill will. But I'm not going to be like, oh, I hope Trent has a great career there and they win lots of trophies, because I don't. And maybe I'd feel differently if he had just told the club 2 years ago, I want to go hang out with my buddy Jude and you should get 60, 70 million and let's sign a 1 year bumper and I'll get you guys 70 million for me. I feel like you did the opposite. Now, I will say I want to be fair here because we've had so many comments coming in. But here's one from You'll Never Walk Alone family saying, I still support Trent. And just to show the balance of this, you know, you have Sir Z saying, you know, I'm definitely not defending Trent. I'm in the same boat as everyone else. And then we come down where Sparky Parky's letting us know he's in the UK at the moment and Trent is being, you know, absolutely destroyed in Liverpool, you know, at the current moment. And I'm not really surprised to see that type of sentimentality. I will say, I don't know if, you know, Aaron's trying to be serious or taking the piss. The lads, the bottle job is very close. It was a draw. And it was a draw when everyone else in the league also drew and dropped points except for City. They still are 6 to 9 points ahead with a game in hand. And they play almost every tough side in their building compared to on the road. So I still think the only side in this division that stops Liverpool from winning, the only one that stops Liverpool from winning this league is Liverpool. I don't think this is down to opponents. I think this was down to a bad performance. And we've had one other bad performance earlier this season against Forest, and it actually spurned on maybe the best 6 to 8 match run we had, which gave us the big lead we had in the Champions League. So I love the fact that our next league match is against Forest, because if there's any side Arn is going to make sure and get us ready for, it is the Forest side. But before we move on to talking about Spurs and some of the other stuff, I did want to touch on this situation with the contracts with Trent, Mo, and Virgil. So at some point, there has to be some form of decision made, right, by either the players or the club when it comes to these contracts. Or do you believe they will actually all go on this way? Like, do you think they could go silent until May and keep dealing with these reporters, keep dealing with these comments, keep dealing with this speculation? Or at some point, is it behooving on the club to just come out and say, we have ended negotiations with Trent Alexander-Arnold. We have had an impasse. We have decided we're not going to move forward with this negotiation? Because I feel like in some ways, because the club is trying to take the high road here, at some point, they're going to have to take control of this story in the media, or they're just going to keep getting dragged by supporters and media alike. Am I crazy?
No, and in some regards, it has parallels to Klopp's announcement, right? Like where I think the club knew some stuff, sat on it, and then got to the point where they had to release it. So I don't think you're crazy thinking that. I also think that they could very well have decisions made in private that they may have even let club captains know about, and that are not going to be public until down the road. But yeah, I mean, could they get to a point from a media standpoint where they have to start controlling the narrative? For sure. I mean, we saw that with the Jurgen Klopp situation when he, when they announced his resignation or his planned resignation well before they wanted to, because they kind of had to. So it's possible.
Yeah, I just don't understand how far they can let it go. I think at some point there has to be some form of a discussion. Obviously, January has just kicked off. Here we are 6 days in. Hasn't been a lot of movement, obviously, in the transfer window. Do you think there'll be any activity from Hughes and or Edwards when it comes to player personnel, either incomings, outgoings, loans? What would you like to see the club do, if anything, to Aaron's comment, maybe strengthen the side to try to bottle up what he believes is about to be a epic collapse?
I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of movement. And I'll tell you, because I think this was a rebuilding and an evaluation year. And I think that they have found that, hey, we are sitting at the top of the table, possibly with the potential to be 11 points clear with games in hand. And we're still in an evaluating pattern with a new manager. So I personally don't see a lot of action happening this January. What I would like personally, I think we need a left back. I think we at least need one center back. I think we need a midfielder, and I think we need to find a number 9. So I think the squad has a lot of things that it needs, and that's on top of sorting out contracts. So I think there's a lot to do here. I just don't think typically that's not prudent to do in January. And I certainly don't see a lot of teams make a ton of movement when they're at the top of the table in January, like we are, especially when your sporting director is a guy who keeps it pretty tight to the vest. Could we strengthen from a position of strength? Sure. I just think there needs to be a larger conversation about that, right? I think a lot of people just assume that means buying more players, and I don't think it necessarily does, especially when, we have a pattern with this administration of essentially doing that by paring down the side and then picking your points and what you want to get your sort of injection of new players in. So I don't see it. Is it possible? Yeah, I don't see it.
Aaron's just going to keep doubling down. He says Alvarez and Leao at the bare minimum just to give us a sniff to try and take it as far as we can before City claw their way back once they hit their
City is worried about winning 2 in a row before they win 10.
Yeah, I genuinely don't understand where Aaron's coming from. He talks above earlier about, not being a believer. They're top of the table in the Premier League, top of the table in the Champions League. They're in the League Cup semifinal, and they have a good draw in the FA Cup. They have a side that's probably the healthiest of any side in all the Premier League, and they score more goals from 5 different attackers and get goals out of the midfield. I just don't understand this. Woe is me, Chicken Little mentality from any supporter. I do get it. We bottled it before, but the bottling in the past years was about the squad not being built. And I think this squad is deep enough. The question is, will they get enough from Jota? Will they get anything from Chiesa? And can Darwin get back to any form of semblance to give you some form of moderate goal scoring from the bench? Sparky says no signings in January. I tend to agree with them. I'd love to see them make a move. I know there was talk today that there were 2 mysterious teams in for David Luiz from Juventus, obviously not having a good run of things since going there from Aston Villa. Would you be interested in the Brazilian midfielder if he was available? Is he the type of player that the club needs from the standpoint that he's Premier League proven, he's having a bad run of it at a foreign club where he's not happy and probably would accept moving to a rehabilitation side?
I totally missed the player. Who did you say?
It was Luis, the former midfielder from Villa.
Yeah, I'd love that pickup. That'd be a great pickup. I mean, we need a natural 6. That makes sense. I would love that pickup. I think it'd be great.
Yeah, I liked it as well. Saw that as a real opportunity, also because the player would accept like a loan with not even an option. He's basically being frozen out at Juventus because that's one of those weird ones where they agreed to the transfer mid-season and then they brought in a new manager in the summer and he really had no interest in the player from the moment he got there. I think maybe my most favorite at the time, part about that move is it seems like it's a package deal and you get his beautiful 12 of a 10 girlfriend to come play for your female side as well. And the Liverpool women's side probably need that more than the men's side needed at this point. So it would be nice to see her playing as well. I can't even go through any more Aaron's comments. I appreciate you, Aaron. You might be paid by the word, but it takes up the screen and it'll take up too much time to read it. But we all do remember that. But I'll tell you right now, as great as Bobby, Mo, and Mane were in 2019, there was nothing behind it. Like, that's what there was at that time. And I think we have more firepower in a deeper midfield that can score goals. I also think this manager is more equipped to see through a finishing of the job than Klopp was at that time with that side. So to me, this is, once again, I'm going to come back to it over and over. This is about 100%. This is about Liverpool Football Club. And if they literally average, I think it's 1.8 or 2.1 points per match the rest of the way, they can't be beat. Like, it's mathematically impossible.
Yeah, so, and if your magic number is 10 wins, we've done that in 13 matches. So,
and I just feel like this side is going to get better as time goes on. We'll see what happens. But before we get too far and looking into the crystal ball, we won't touch on the Accrington Stanley match. One, because how the hell am I supposed to preview an Accrington Stanley match?
You don't want to predict that lineup?
Other than to tell you, if Kwanzaa doesn't start that match, he might as well go across the other dressing room and see if Accrington Stanley has a spot for him in their 11. But our next match is on Wednesday. We will be taking on Tottenham Hotspur in London at the Tottenham Hotspur's beautiful state-of-the-art stadium. And it is the first of 2 legs in the League Cup semifinals. So, Paul, before we talk about the lineup and how it goes, what exactly where would you put the level of importance at this stage when you get to a semifinal and you're playing a side like Spurs and you are in for 4 competitions and you've hit a little bit of a bumpy patch? If you're Arne Slot, how are you looking at this match? Is there heavy rotation, some rotation? Talk to me about your output and what is your expectations for what the manager will require.
I mean, I think you got to go for it here, right? You got to try to win everything you can. And if you're in a semifinal and your match after that is an FA Cup match, to me, like, you have to go for that, especially if your other cup on the other side is in the early rounds, right? Like, I feel like if you are going to play with heavy rotation in a cup match, you do so in the early rounds. Once you start hitting sort of the quarters and the semis, you start bleeding in your first teamers. I would expect a full strongest starting 11 in this match, and I would be shocked if we saw anything differently.
I think there'll be a couple pieces rotated just because I think you are playing a lot of matches at this point and they have gone consistent. I think the manager still wants to give people reasons to fight as well. Like I could see one of the fullbacks getting rotated here. You know, if Soboslai is healthy, maybe he starts. I also think this could be where Jota gets a start and maybe you bring Diaz on from the bench. I think the heavy rotation match where you get your Darwins, your Chiesas, and probably your Bradley starting, right, is probably that Accrington Stanley and back to Kelleher. I think if it were me, I think I would go Kwanzaa, Van Dyke, Simicast, Trent.
And you then in the mid first Spurs?
Yeah. Because I don't think you can start Konate back to back. And I just feel like it's probably time to give even Gakpo a rest. Like maybe you move Diaz over to the left. I know how good Gakpo's played, or maybe you start Gakpo against Spurs and Diaz. I think that.
So are you starting Costas on Wednesday and Saturday?
No, I think I would start. I might even think about starting one of the kids on Saturday, because I think Morton starts on Saturday, to be honest, against Accrington Stanley, and I think if he doesn't, then we're really in trouble. I also think, there was a comment up here, and I'm not sure. We've been hard on Aaron at times in this, but I don't disagree with this statement. He's saying, by the way, if Chiesa doesn't start, I think his time is up with us. I'm not sure if he was talking about the match on Wednesday or Saturday against Accrington. I think he'll start.
I think we'd be shocked if he started Wednesday, right?
I think Chiesa starts against Accrington. Yeah. And if he doesn't, there probably is a good chance. I did wonder if potentially putting him on the bench this weekend was almost a tip to the cap to the Italian sides to be like, hey, he's not out of our plans. We still think this Chiesa guy has some merit here. Hey, Napoli, up that offer. Hey, Inter Milan, you sure you don't want to increase the loan offer with the obligation to buy? And we all know I was very big and excited about Chiesa coming. Still think there's a role for him if he can work his way out, but it's just not looking like he's fitting in. And the manager just doesn't seem to have the positive nature. Sparky says, I want Trent to start to give him a chance to refocus. And I honestly believe that's why we see Bradley at the weekend and we see Trent in this match. I think so much has been said about Trent. Arne Slot knows it. And I think Arne Slot definitely makes a statement with this lineup in a few ways. And I think one of those big statements is reinforcing the fact that he believes in Trent and that Trent knows he had a clunker of a match, but Trent can get himself out of it. And I also wouldn't put it past Trent to have, a man of the match performance against Spurs and look virtuoso and get 2 assists and a goal. But I also think that makes it a lot easier if Soboslai's playing because he has someone covering the space in front of him. Because let's be real, the one thing we didn't talk about in the United recap was exactly how abysmal Mo Salah was at doing anything but go forward. Because if we thought if we thought Trent looked like he wanted to be anywhere but on that freezing cold pitch, Mo put in the least amount of work off the ball as I've ever seen under Arne Slot. And that says a lot because Mo has put in a few of those kind of lackluster performances. Do you think Soboslai playing will have that big of a difference on Trent if he does get the start?
I think Soboslai playing has a difference on everybody, as evidenced by what Curtis Jones looks like every time he's in the role that Soboslai does. And I think this is interesting, man. I love Curtis Jones. I've been really one of the people that's been adamantly defended him when people have been really down on Curtis Jones. You and me were in agreement, and we bandied about for a long time that he was our best midfielder for about a 14 to 16 month period, starting last year. I think my issue with this is every time that Curtis Jones gets forced into a lineup through injury and he gets a spot start because, he's the next man up in the rotation, I can't help but feel slightly disappointed every time he comes out into that. And I don't know if that's just me not remembering things correctly. That couldn't be completely inaccurate on my part. I just get this gut feeling when he gets forced start into a lineup, he's underwhelming, and he needs a run of matches to kind of get going again. I also think, like, for all the attacking flair and stuff that we talked about, Curtis, when he was coming out of the academy, he was considered mostly an attacking player. I mean, we were even playing around with the idea of playing him up top, like on one of the wings for a while. And I think we kind of got caught up into the fact that, like, he hits that banger versus Chelsea, spends 2 years trying to recreate it. So I think we get caught up in some of the stuff he does offensively. I don't know that he's that player anymore. And I don't see him being able to do a lot of the things that Szoboszlai does offensively that sort of knits the midfield to the front line and ties them together in a way that Szoboszlai does. Like, and I almost feel like he's better off. I feel like Curtis Jones plays better off in the double pivot, like back into one of those spots. And I think that's probably part of it for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I think he looks better actually as like Gravenberch's understudy than he does when he's asked to play in the 10 role. He's had some really good performances. I know the manager loves him. Clearly the manager rates Curtis Jones ahead of Harvey Elliott. That is evident, right? And it makes a person like me sad because I just feel like Harvey Elliott's one of these guys who just feels like he gets knocked down with an injury or just a weird moment. And then before you know it, he's just not able to carry the same, he doesn't carry the same clout with the manager. Sir Z makes a comment and says, Chiesa's agent has said the rumors are false and he's focused on Liverpool. Won't be the first time that an agent has said something on Tuesday that turned out to be different on Wednesday and then on Thursday changes everything over. So I hope that's the case. And I do believe he wants to make it work. Whether the club believes it's going to work and the manager has faith in him are two completely different things. And the fact that by all accounts on all the local media that basically Jayden Danns has been in senior training every single day, that makes me think, and not even playing with the under 21s, even when he's not dressing with Liverpool and he's traveling with the side, that makes me think that this manager thinks more and more that he might be in his plans for the rest of the season. And maybe one of these stories of impending departures, whether it be Chiesa or even Darwin to an Italian side, might be legit. Because Slot has said all along, I need 6 attackers to play the style I want, and I want 6 attackers in my senior setup. If he's bringing a 6th attacker into his senior setup and he doesn't expect to buy another player, that would make you think there's a possibility that one of them could go. And I think we all know Mo, Diaz, Gakpo, and Jota are going nowhere anytime soon. So, Paul, before we get to the predictions on the League Cup, there was a story today. It was supported by a few of the journalists that said there was basically like a clear, the reporters are allowed such access to the dressing room after the matches. And anyone who's ever been to Liverpool knows it's a very small area where the reporters are allowed in. So if anything was happening inside the locker room or the dressing room, you'd hear it from where the reporters wait for the post-match opportunity to speak with the players. And there was reports of some unrest, some players getting at each other, some frustrations after the final whistle. There was reports of Darwin Nunez yelling and Virgil van Dijk yelling, and almost like the players taking up a divide and defending each other from what I would assume is probably Virgil laying into Trent, laying into Konate, laying into the players that he felt let them down on the day. You've been in a ton of dressing rooms. I've been in a ton of locker rooms, right? We've all been in these fights. This is all just literally proverbial water under the bridge, right? They all got to the training facility today, busting balls, making jokes, or at least there to prove the other one wrong. Or could this be something that we have to keep a closer eye on if it continues to happen?
I would way rather that my side is doing that in a locker room than having Christmas parties the day after they get blown out and relegated like Leicester. Like I'd much rather there be unrest and unhappiness under an underwhelming performance at home versus a rival. Like I don't know what else you would expect. And in fact, if it was a quiet dressing room and everybody walked out with their earbuds in and went home, I'd be a little concerned about that.
Sparky is right. I didn't want to go into I was waiting for someone in the comments to kind of validate my sentiment here.
Trent,
yep.
Trent needs that. Like, he needs somebody like in his ear fucking dressing him down right now.
And that was basically apparently Virgil laid into Trent, and to Brian Shelton's point, what does Darwin have to yell about? Apparently it was Darwin Nunez who was the player who actually vocally came to Trent's defense.
See, if I were Darwin, I'd be yelling that he was worse than him. So,
but he was. I do give though, at the same time, my argument would be, I don't love this. I like Virgil doing it. Let me tell you, Sir Z, if you actually, Nunez doesn't even speak English, what is he yelling? I think social media is trying to disrupt our season. It was reported by journalists that are respected, and some even from the Anfield Rap, that they heard it. They're fanboys as much as us. They're not saying this except for it was real. But I'll also fill you in on this one, Sir Z. Just like Ichiro didn't speak any English until he had a hot mic on him and everyone found out he spoke the best English in the world, Darwin could give interviews in English and knows just enough English to say, go bleep yourself, Virgil, leave Trent alone if he wants to. This is purely, I like it though, when any player sticks up for another player. Like, some people are like, oh, it means there's fractions in the locker room. No, it means the captain dug in on a player who wasn't great, and a guy who also wasn't great was like, okay, enough, defends his teammate in front of everyone else. They didn't get in a physical fight. It is no different. And Alan says it right here. Hendo would have done likewise to Trent.
Hendo would have
done it on the pitch.
Yep.
Hendo would have undressed him.
I bet Trent doesn't even put that performance out on the pitch with Hendo there.
Well,
Hendo would have grabbed him by the ear and took him to the bench.
As soon as the ball bounces in the box, Henderson would have cleared it into the opponent's side, grabbed Trent, spun him around, and just started undressing him right there on the pitch. At least Virgil waited until they got into the privacy of the dressing room. This wasn't meant to be fuel on Aaron's fire about how this is falling apart. In many ways, I always think you don't know about a team's makeup until they have some adversity.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw it last year. Last year's team fell apart when they went to United, had that lead, came back, should have won the match, and then lost it. And then match after match, you could almost see the frailties. It was like that game was a magnifying glass for everyone else. I feel like this could be that watershed, that right said moment for them. They were reading all the press clippings. They're human beings. They're dealing with the contracts. It's why I do think some clarity would be so great. And I really hope that at some point in the coming weeks, they're able to come to an agreement with Mo and or Virgil. I would love for either direction, either re-sign Trent or have him announce he's going to Madrid at the end of the year. I just feel like it would be what would be in the best interest of the club as a whole. I know I'm in the minority when it comes to that, but I do believe that this is a moment for them. You're taking on a wounded Spurs team. I know we were going up against a wounded United team, but this is a wounded Spurs team, which is in worse shape as far as injuries go. They have no center backs, and let's be real. The manager is reeling, like absolutely reeling. I don't know that he knows which way is up, which way is down. The one thing I will say is don't go there lackluster and concede early, because then you give a Spurs team that has some good attacking players the chance to go for the jugular. Because if Spurs get up 2-0, they're going to try to win this thing 4-1, 4-0, 4-1, because then it's really difficult to rotate and come home. So I guess we'll get out of here on this one, Paul. What do you expect out of this side? What is a good result for you? And what do you expect the result to be?
Oh God, I feel like with Spurs, it's always a fucking carnival. Like, and it always ends up being some ridiculous 5-3, 6-4, like just ridiculous match. Man, I want to say. All right, I'll go there. I'll say 3-0 clean sheet. We refocus, we rebound. We basically go back to our principles and really sort of start with the back line, protect ourselves, build out of the back, possession-oriented football, where a lot of people think is boring, but we just comfortably win. And I think we sort of emphasize our stability in controlling possession like we did towards the beginning of the season. Get back to more of that. I could see that. I could see a big refocus, big reshift. And let's hope that's the case. And let's hope that, Trent stops being a dickhead.
Yeah. Sparky says 2-1 win. It's a very conservative scoreline for Spurs and Liverpool. This is so crazy. Like, I could see this thing ending 4-0.
Yeah.
I can honestly see this thing. I could also see this thing being like a 7-6. I could see this being a 7-6 aggregate over 2 legs that is just asinine and just irritates everyone and reminds everyone that the League Cup semifinal should not be a 2-leg affair. Why this isn't a single leg affair doesn't make any sense to me. Right. Why this just, if you don't just, I know the FA Cup, the allure is if you get to the semifinals, you get your day at Wembley, but the League Cup, you got to get to the final. To me, it's just like, why wouldn't you just make this a single match? I don't believe there's extra time as well. I think it goes straight to penalties. That's how it was earlier. But Sparky does say, I just want a solid performance and hopefully a win. And I do really agree with that. Alan says, I'll take 3-2 first leg. Brian Shelton says 3-2 win. Spurs matches are like Newcastle matches. I'm going to... Well, I mean, part of the reasons it's 2-legged is that if it was 1-legged, it would just fall right the fuck over.
It's a real opportunity for you and Brian
Shelton. Sorry, BJ. Oh, yeah, I'm waiting. I was waiting for the dig at Eddie Howe eventually. No Newcastle match could have less than 2 goals. You notice there's not been as many digs in Discord when they've won 8 out of 10 matches and went from like 11th to 5th and are quickly about 3 points out of 2nd. Always good. That's what we love about this community is that we not only poke fun, we take goddamn receipts, people. So if you're going to drop things into this chat, we're going to bring them up months from now, years from now. We're going to call you out as long as you're wrong. If you're right, well, then we only bring it up on your birthday and talk about how smart you were over the summer.
Nothing makes me feel older than asking Matouche to help me find a receipt on Discord for something I said 3 years ago.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. He can find anything quicker than anyone I've ever seen. I feel like sometimes he just takes screenshots when he sees them and then he like catalogs them so he can quickly search like a database. It's like
do you think he has like database folders that he drags them into? Like,
it's a good thing. It's a good thing he's never met my wife, because if he taught my wife how to keep those receipts, she'd have every dumb shit I've said for the last 14 years. And let me tell you, people, well, who am I kidding? You fucking know. You listen to me way too much. There's a lot of dumb shit that gets said. What isn't dumb is Sparky Parky saying, night, guys, great show. It was a great show. It's also not a dumb idea to get the hell on over to the YouTube page if you haven't already. We had a ton of new viewers tonight, and folks jump in. Some have been here before in our morning shows, some new people. I want to thank everyone who popped into the chat tonight, from Aaron to Sir Z, Sparky, Brian Shelton, Dave, Leslie. We appreciate all of you. We couldn't do this programming without you, but we need you to grow. So please give it a like, give it a subscribe, share it with a friend. And as Timuchin would say, hit all the buttons that matter, like, share, subscribe, except for the thumbs down, because nobody doesn't like that. Nobody dislikes this program enough to hit that thumbs down. The best part is no AI song. Well, no, we don't have an AI song yet for the closing, but don't kid yourself. Timuchin had 3 hours today before his anniversary celebration, which means he probably made 5 new songs to annoy all the listeners. We appreciate you all very much. We will see you next week when we are back. We will be here for some pre-match, post-match. Have a great week and talk to you soon.